Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Johnson, Dean of the UC Davis School of Law, and I want to welcome the Speaker Emeritus of the California State Assembly, John Perez, UC Davis Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor Ralph Hexter, campus leaders, law faculty, friends and family of our graduates, and King Hall students and alumni to the UC Davis School of Law Class of 2014 Commencement Ceremony. Please rise for the performance of our national anthem by your own law cappella. Since I'm the first speaker today, I get to be the first person to say this. Congratulations to the class of 2014. We have a great law school because we have great students. And the class of 2014 is truly remarkable. It includes students who earned their undergraduate degrees from the finest universities in the world and who come from an inspiring, diverse set of life experiences. The class includes business people, scientists, healthcare workers, athletes, musicians, school teachers, Peace Corps volunteers, journalists, soldiers, paralegals, and much more. They worked at law firms and poverty law clinics with state legislators and members of Congress. They helped the homeless, refugees, and at-risk youth. During law school, that was just before law school, but during law school, members of the class of 2014 excelled in moot court, mock trial, negotiations, and other competitions. About half the class completed the law school's public service program and devoted an incredible 40,000 hours of time to ensure equal access to justice. And they had many extraordinary experiences. Our clinical students represented immigrants, prisoners, battered women, and others. We had students intern in Washington, D.C., and even had a class visit from Justice Anthony Kennedy. Our Asian American Law Students Association began a movement to correct a historic wrong of a young man, Hong Yen Chang, who was denied admission to the California bar because of his race. We also have to recognize and must recognize our outstanding Masters of Law graduates who come from literally the world over. China, Dubai, India, Indonesia, Iran, Kazakhstan, Korea, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, and the United Kingdom. Our LLM students add greatly to King Hall's diversity, excellence, and global family. I want to congratulate the families and friends of all our graduates who made this day possible. You should be incredibly proud of your students for going to law school and getting a legal education, and who will soon be lawyers. When people are in trouble, whether it's a business owner, a homeowner, a worker, an immigrant, a homeless person, or a veteran, they look to lawyers for help. When they want justice, they look to lawyers. And the class of 2014, no doubt, will be there to help with finely honed legal skills, a firm moral compass, and respect for their clients. Now, members of the class of 2014 selected a classmate to speak to you today. They selected Irene Williams. Just so you're not confused, she goes by Irene Davis Law on Facebook. Irene grew up in Houston, Texas, and, as she will tell you, no doubt, attended the University of Texas, Austin. Irene chose UC Davis School of Law because of its commitment to the values of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. At King Hall, Irene excelled in the mock trial program and served as co-chair of the Black Law Students Association. She helped organize the law school's very first Black alumni reunion in 2013. Soon, Irene will be an assistant district attorney in Sacramento County, so make sure and stay out of trouble when you're in Sacramento. Please welcome Irene Williams.
Good afternoon. Class of 2014, how you feeling? Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. For those of you who don't know me, I developed quite a reputation at King Hall. Don't worry, Mom, it's mostly a good reputation. So I was born and raised in another state, a pretty prominent state, pretty big prominent state in the South. And subsequently, I attended a university that was already mentioned. I wasn't going to mention it in that state. And throughout my last 3 years at King Hall, I've been adamant about wearing that other university's colors, throwing the infamous hand sign, which I won't do, yelling out the slogans in the hallway at random people. My classmates became used to this. Now, when I was selected as the student speaker, I had to promise a lot of people I wouldn't do that here today. Like, I mean, you can't do that. And I was like, okay. And I'm a woman of my word, but, you know, I do have to do one thing. I'm a woman of my word. Now, this hat feels real good on me right now, but I am in California now. I'm going to a California university, graduating from the best law school in California. Forget that Stanford and Berkeley people. You know, maybe it's time for a change, you know? As proud as I am to be a Longhorn, maybe it's time for a new chapter, class of 2014. How's that? Is that better? As proud as I am to be a Longhorn, today I'm equally as proud to forever become a member of the King Hall family. Today, class of 2014, we start a new chapter. And for each of us, that means different things. Some of us will pursue a career at big law firms where we'll make a lot of money, but we won't have any time to spend it. Hashtag, you work too much, bro. Some of us will be starting our legal career with the government, where we'll make a little bit of money, but we'll have tons of time to spend it. Hashtag, show me the money. Some of us in the room will do the good work, God's work. We'll do the nonprofit work. Those people, they won't make any money. And they won't have any time to spend the money they don't make. Hashtag, but you're saving the world. Finally, there's a select few of us who are graduating today who will not be pursuing a legal career at all. We'll be using our legal degree in a non-legal job. Those people, all I have to say is #winning. Classmates, however you start this next chapter, I hope your journey is highlighted by two key things. First, it's imperative that we remember the humanness of our profession. From this day forward, we will forever be associated with lawyers. Don't tell your mom and dad, but lawyers don't have the best reputation. They're often seen as self-serving, money-hungry, plain jerks, and that's mostly true. But it's my hope that throughout our careers, we make an effort to change that reputation for the best. Your clients are humans. They're not a paycheck. They're not a claim to fame. They're not an opportunity for you to get ahead at the expense of others. First and foremost, they are human beings, plain and simple. And when you get a client in your office, and that client doesn't come from where you come from, doesn't have the level of education you have, that client doesn't look like you, sound like you, or even think like you, it is my hope that you'll see none of that, class of 2014. Hopefully, all you'll see is a human being who has a problem that you're able and willing to help with. After all, in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., humans see what they want to see. Finally, the other thing I hope my classmates carry with them throughout their journey, throughout their legal career, this next chapter in their life, is their individual sense of identity. You're gonna come across people who will tell you who you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to act, conformity. It is imperative that each of us remember that we should not change who we are because of what the legal profession says we should be. The greatest gift to man is his individuality. So love who you will. Laugh in the room when no one else is laughing, Kyle. Be the loudest one in the room. Be the one who refuses to settle for things being the way it is just because that's the way it's always been. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for others. Stand up for something, anything. And should you come across someone, a boss, a colleague, former classmate, anyone, who tries to change you, tries to get you to conform, to think like the mainstream, stand firm and don't back down. What the legal profession needs, what this world needs, is individuals who are not afraid to be individuals. Individuals bold enough to think for themselves. Let me just conclude by saying, none of us, classmates, got where we are today by ourselves. Look around. The people who help us get here are in this room today. I'm fortunate. My two mentors throughout law school are here today, Judge Diane Voiters and Andre Campbell of the Hanson Bridget Law Firm. Throughout my time in law school, they've supported me, encouraged me, guided me. Many of you have similar mentors. Maybe it was someone you met in an internship, maybe it was a family friend, maybe it was a professor. Thank those people. I am forever in debt to Judge Voiters, Andre Campbell, and thank you. Least we forget not to thank our families, moms, dads, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, significant others, baby fathers. Thank you all for your support, your love, your encouragement. We wouldn't be here today without you. Especially to my mom, thank you. This one is for you, Wonder Woman. To my class, it's been a heck of a ride. I had the other word, but I changed it because my mom is. It's been a heck of a ride. It's been an awesome 3 years. I'm honored to have walked the halls of King Hall with every single one of you. It's been truly a pleasure to have sat in the same classroom, attended the same legal events, been a part of the same organizations and clubs. Each of you will change the world in some form or fashion. I'm proud to say that I'm a member of your class. Let me just say this is the last time, class of 2014, that we're all gonna be together in a room like this. So, I decided I'd take advantage of this opportunity. I'm gonna go ahead and call out the people who still owe me money. Katie, Professor Tanaka, Nelson, Jenna. The list is kind of long, so I'll save the rest for the swearing-in ceremony. Class of 2014, I love you. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thanks, Irene. I think it is fair to say that King Hall will never be the same after you leave. Now we have an encore from La Capella. Thanks, La Capella. The class of 2014 has selected an extraordinary scholar and teacher as the faculty speaker. Before joining the UC Davis Law faculty in 2012, Professor David Horton taught at Loyola Law School in Los Angeles. A graduate of Carleton College and UCLA School of Law, Professor Horton clerked for the Honorable Ronald White at the U.S. District Court for the Central District of California, and then practiced law for an international law firm. His research focuses on wills and trusts, arbitration law, and contracts. Known for his exuberant teaching, Professor Horton has been known to wear a chicken suit to class. I do not believe he's wearing it today. Please join me in welcoming Professor David Horton.
Thank you, Dean Johnson. If you've ever been unlucky enough to have me as a professor, you know that I like to begin class by reviewing, by going over where we are and where we've been. So let's review. You have just completed one of the most demanding academic programs possible. Day after day, you've hauled around back-breaking casebooks. Day after day, you've read page after page of fine print. You know, there's been a lot of debate lately about the value of legal education, but I know two groups who aren't complaining about law school: chiropractors and optometrists. Day after day, you've mastered mind-bending legal rules. Call an old friend, somebody you haven't spoken to for a couple years, and tell her that a residuary clause exercises a special power of appointment if the residuary beneficiaries are also objects of the power, and she'll think you've been brainwashed by the world's most boring cult. Day after day, you've internalized statutes written with all the grace of a poem that doesn't use the letter E, or a sentence you might string together out of refrigerator magnets. Consider Uniform Commercial Code Section 2205, which provides in a single unbroken passage that an offer by a merchant to buy or sell goods in a signed writing that gives assurance that it will be held open is not revocable for the time stated, or if no time is stated, for a reasonable time, but no such term of assurance shall last longer than 3 months, but any such term of assurance on a form supplied by the offeree has to be separately signed by the offeror. It's just that simple. Actually, in fairness to the drafters of the UCC, they were writing in a different era, before the invention of punctuation. Day after day, you've essentially been learning another language, the language of the law. You've been learning another language in the sense that you've discovered that persterpes is not, in fact, an embarrassing medical condition. And you've been learning another language in the sense that you've absorbed 1,000 tiny norms of a discrete professional culture. And our amazing LLM students who come from all over the globe, you've learned this foreign language and culture of the law in a foreign language and culture. I do not know how you do it. Day after day, you survive the stress, the grind, the sleeplessness, and if your law school experience was like mine, the creeping feeling in all your classes that everybody else gets it, that you alone don't understand. All your hard work, your mental toughness and tenacity has brought you to this auditorium today. I hope you'll find time this weekend to let this accomplishment sink in, to pop the cork and let the wine breathe. Whatever you like to do, whether it's eating or drinking, dancing or singing, staying up late or going to bed early, I hope you do it tonight. You have earned it. So while I've got your ear for a little bit this afternoon, I want to talk about the profession that you're on the cusp of entering. The truth is, I know a lot of lawyers. I myself was a practicing lawyer for several years. My wife's a lawyer. My dad's a lawyer. My father-in-law's a lawyer. My brother-in-law's a lawyer. My 8-year-old daughter, Eleanor, is not a lawyer, but she thinks like a lawyer. A few years ago, we were driving. Eleanor was in the back seat with her sister, Lily, when all of a sudden Lily said, "Ow!" Ow, Eleanor pinched me. To which Eleanor replied, I didn't do it, and I did it gently. Now that's thinking like a lawyer. So from my own experience and being surrounded by all these actual and budding lawyers, I have a pretty good sense of what it's like to be a lawyer. So what's it like? Well, I won't lie to you. It's challenging. The practice of law is challenging for the same reason that law school is challenging, because the law itself is challenging. The law has a way of humiliating brilliant people. I'll never forget the summer associate I worked with, this razor-sharp woman who went to an elite law school that will remain nameless and is called Yale. I'll never forget hearing her tell a senior partner that she found the perfect case for her research assignment, one that solved the client's problem. And she could tell that it was an important case because Westlaw put a red flag next to it. Simply put, being a new lawyer is overwhelming. The first thing you learn is how much left you have to learn. The answer to one question, the applicable statute of limitations or the page limits for filing a brief, leads down a path to a whole forest of fresh questions. There's a wonderful expression that captures this process of constantly uncovering your own ignorance, and it goes like this: the horizon of the known recedes as you approach it. And even after you get your feet wet a little bit, even after you get comfortable, the practice of law remains challenging. I think it's telling that we say that lawyers practice law. An attorney with 50 years' experience is still practicing, never perfecting. So at this point, you're probably thinking something like this: why did I vote for Horton for faculty commencement speaker? I thought this was going to work like one of his classes. I thought I wouldn't actually have to show up. I thought I could actually find a video later if I felt like it and watch it. I thought at least he'd be upbeat, but man, he's bringing me down. So maybe now would be a good time to share something with you. I firmly believe that few jobs are as rewarding as practicing law. The practice of law is fundamentally about helping people. Now, that may sound like something that's pretty to believe in law school and then dissolves in the grim light of the real world, but my experience was the converse. Nothing reinforced my sense that practicing law is a noble profession more than practicing law. I can still remember the look of elation on one client's face when we won a dispositive motion, or the palpable weight that seemed to lift from another client's shoulders when she signed a trust that ensured that her children would be taken care of. This sounds trite, but it's true. When I set foot in a courtroom and I see all that marble and wood, the great seal behind the judge, I feel something. The breath of a ghost on the back of my neck or a flutter of wings in my stomach. Because the law is nothing less than our collective attempt to define the kind of society we want to live in. Think of just some of the great changes brought about by people working in the law. 60 years ago, public schools were segregated. 50 years ago, an employer could fire an employee because of her race or gender. A little more than 40 years ago, there was no Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, or Environmental Protection Agency. 30 years ago, seatbelts in cars weren't mandatory. About 20 years ago, my best friend told me that he was gay, but he was too terrified to tell anybody else. This October, in front of more than 100 people, he's gonna marry his longtime partner. You can flip open the US Code or the federal supplement and see a series of antiseptic legal principles, but I see a blueprint that affects the most important aspects of real people's lives. The practice of law is challenging because all things truly worth doing are challenging. And don't get me wrong, it is challenging. You'll stay up past midnight and also get up early the next morning. Or even worse, sometimes you'll be given tasks that you find horribly mundane that you handle on autopilot. You'll cross swords with people who'll do everything in their power to prove that they're smarter than you. And on the flip side, you'll meet opposing counsel who seem like lawyer jokes incarnate, folks who make Saul Goodman from Breaking Bad look like Atticus Finch. And sometimes the joke will be on you. Sometimes you'll fail. Sometimes you'll make mistakes. Lord knows I have, again and again. The practice of law is ceaselessly challenging. But I also happen to know a group of people dear to my heart, who have proven that they rise to a challenge. That's you, by the way. If you haven't figured that out yet, I am talking about you. I am so impressed by your intelligence, by your kindness and compassion, and by your ability to stare down adversity. I'm talking about the work ethic of people like Tony Chi or Anita Mukherjee, who show up prepared and enthusiastic for a 10 a.m. class despite a 4-hour round-trip commute. I'm talking about people like Islam Ahmed, who have balanced law school with the demands of being a parent. I'm talking about Jimmy Newman, who believes so passionately in leveling the playing field between police and citizens that he once drove from Davis to Seattle to see a client when he couldn't get funding for a plane ticket. I'm talking about all of you who have handled pressures that no previous generation of law students has faced: skyrocketing tuition, an anemic job market, grave problems that we owe you an obligation to try to fix. At every turn, it would have been so easy to give up, but you didn't. And the very perseverance that brought you to this auditorium today also holds the seeds of your future success. From now on, it will be my great pleasure to follow the arc of your career and to say, I knew you back in the day. If you've ever been unlucky enough to have me as a professor, you know that I also like to end class by reviewing, by trying to salvage the key points from a lecture filled with rambling and pop culture references that I think are edgy but are actually from the 1990s. But today I'm going to do something that's the polar opposite of telling you what to take away. Today, in true Socratic fashion, I'm going to end by asking you a question. And like all questions in law school, it's going to come at the end of a long and confusing fact pattern, so bear with me. Here we go. I can imagine the future. I can imagine that it's 50 years from now. I can imagine that the King Hall class of 2064 is sitting right where you're sitting, listening to a graduation speaker. Now, in my imagination, the students are texting each other on some device that Google puts right in your brain, but that's not relevant. Let's ignore that for now. I can imagine that the speaker describes the great changes brought about by people working in the law. I can imagine that what the speaker describes is your legacy, a legacy brought about by battling in the legal trenches and filing impact litigation, but also the day-to-day tasks of representing your clients and the legal system honorably. I can imagine that the speaker describes your legacy, a legacy that has made the world more vibrant, more welcoming, more humane. I can imagine that. That's what I imagine. King Hall class of 2014, you wonderful additions to a venerable profession, I cannot wait to learn the answer to the following question. What can you imagine? Congratulations. Thank you very much, and please stay in touch.
Thanks, David, for those provocative comments, and made me think about two thoughts I can't get out of my mind is, I like Saul Goodman, and I want to see the chicken suit. Each year, the law school medal goes to the student with the highest academic standing among the Juris Doctor candidates. This year's winner, Martin Freeman, is originally from Corvallis, Oregon, and graduated from the University of Colorado Boulder. During law school, he's a senior articles editor of the UC Davis Law Review and served as a member of the Moot Court Board. Next year, Martin will clerk for Chief Judge George King of the United States District Court of the Central District of California, and then will join the international law firm of Simpson Thacher. Martin thanks his family and the excellent King Hall faculty for this award, and I want to congratulate this year's law school medalist, Martin Freeman. Now I want to recognize our distinguished guests and faculty who are here to celebrate your graduation. Please hold your applause till we've introduced the entire stage party, or we might not get out till late. In the first row, Associate Executive Vice Chancellor for Campus Community Relations, Raheem Reed. the Dean of Graduate Studies, Jeff Gibling, Professor Ashutosh Bhagwat, Professor Edward M. Winklerud, who we can't applaud because he's retiring this year. Senior Assistant Dean for Student Affairs, oh, actually I forgot, Professor David Horton. Freud says there are no true mistakes. Senior Assistant Dean for Student Affairs, Hollis Colwin. Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor of UC Davis, Ralph Hexter. Speaker Emeritus of the California Assembly, John A. Perez. Associate Dean and Professor of Law, Vic Amar. Dean of UC Davis Extension, Dennis Pendleton. Alumni Board President and King Hall alum, Gage Dungy. The second row, Executive Director of the Mondavi Center for the Performing Arts and the landlord of the Mondavi Center, Don Roth. Vice Provost for University Outreach and International Programs, Bill Lacey. Vice Chancellor for Development and Alumni Relations, Sean Keister. Professor Alan Brownstein. Professor Rose Villazor. Professor Cruz Reynoso. Professor Floyd Feeney. You're violating our rules. Professor Angela Harris. Professor Lisa Ikamoto. Professor Mondavi Sunder. Dean of the School of Education, Harold Levine. Row 3, Professor Courtney Jocelyn. Professor Jack Chin. Professor Leticia Saucedo. Professor Amagda Perez. We have two Perez's on the stage party today. Professor Evelyn Lewis. Professor Margaret Johns. Professor Thomas Jew. Professor Bob Hillman. Professor Afraf Sharapur. Professor Elizabeth Joe. Professor Anupam Chander. Professor and Dean Emeritus Rex Perschbacher. Fourth row, Professor Carlton Larson. Professor Catherine Flory. Professor Dennis Ventry. Professor Chris Elmendorf. Professor Holly Cooper. Professor Carter White. Professor Lisa Pruitt. Professor Brian Suchek. Professor Darian Shansky. Professor Karima Benoon. Professor Miguel Mendez, who's also retiring this year. Professor John Hunt. Fifth row, and we're almost done. Professor Rick Frank. Professor Leslie McAllister. Professor Raha Georgiani. Professor Clay Tanaka. Professor Larry Green. Professor Barbara Miltner. International Programs Director and Professor Beth Greenwood. She's got her constituency. We are very fortunate to have with us this afternoon Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor Ralph Hexter, a visionary in higher education. A distinguished professor of classics and comparative literature, Professor Hexter is a graduate of Harvard College, Corpus Christi College at the University of Oxford, and Yale University. He came to UC Davis after serving as president of Hampshire College. Professor Hexter previously served as Dean of the Division of Arts and Humanities and Executive Dean of the College of Letters and Science at UC Berkeley. Please join me in welcoming Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor Ralph Hexter.
Thank you, Dean Johnson, and good afternoon, everyone. You know, the dean said to hold your applause after each name, but he never said you could applaud all of the people who are behind me, so I think we should do that now. So, of course, in addition to honoring the distinguished party of faculty and friends, I want to especially mention our guest, Assembly Speaker Emeritus John A. Paris, but Also, let's look further beyond and talk about the family and friends who've supported our graduates through their years here at UC Davis. Truly, we celebrate and acknowledge your efforts here today. And now, to the class of 2014, the reason we're all gathered here, you are indeed worthy of every ounce of pride that your loved ones feel on this great occasion, as well as the admiration of your dean, your professors, and your fellow students. Please give yourself a big round of applause. Now, I understand that my primary function here today is to award diplomas and to get to that task without unnecessary delay. Nevertheless, it is a tradition that a provost leave a graduating class with some words about the great journey that you're about to begin. To speak in a language of well-known folk tale, you're about to leave the safe and familiar surroundings of home and set off into an uncertain forest. It's my place to assure you that you can succeed on your journey and also to try to say something that may keep you from being eaten by a wolf. Well, you've done your part, and so I will do mine. In keeping with the theme I've just introduced, I want to talk to you a little bit today about stories. I suspect that my topic may strike some of you as an odd fit for this important occasion. That's partly because we tend to think of stories as trivial amusements. In a world of so many urgent practical concerns, stories seem like the snow globe we keep on the corner of our work desk. The first thing I want to do is to disabuse you of that notion. This is not the occasion to delve deeply into history. Believe me, I could. But it's worth remembering that Socrates regarded stories as so powerful that when he imagined his ideal republic, he had advocated banning poems like the Iliad and the Odyssey for their corrupting influence. Just as telling, all of the world's religions make extensive and prominent use of stories. Come to think of it, I doubt if I have to convince the future litigators among you that stories are immensely powerful ways to get an audience to see something in a certain way and to believe that certain things are true. Now, creating stories is one of the most fundamental of human activities and essential to how we view the world. In the 18th century, the philosopher David Hume described how each of us faces every second a chaos of disconnected sensations. He said that our minds make sense of that chaos by inventing various sorts of fictions. Stories, we might say, are like the dark matter of our world, pervasive, often invisible, exerting great force, not, in fact, unlike the law. Their influence can be found in everything we do and think, which is also to say that they powerfully shape who we are. And so, in support of my topic today, I want to say that as you set out into the dark and sometimes dangerous forest of your post-King Hall future, few things will be as crucial to your success as how you deal with the innumerable stories that lurk there. Your challenge will be, at least from time to time, to step outside of the stories that you and others find compelling, to understand what they teach, and to gauge the relationship of those lessons to reality and to wisdom. So, what are those stories all around us? Let me cite just a few types, all of which, incidentally, have their roots in the ancient literature I study. The first and obvious one is the blockbuster Hollywood action movie. We wouldn't be mistaken to see a connection to ancient stories celebrating warrior heroes. The Greeks had their legendary Achilles and Ajax. We have our Katniss Everdeen and Spider-Man. Another type, which we tend not to think of as a story, is about extraordinary individuals who build real-world, not fictional empires. The ancients had Aeneas, who founded what would become the Roman Empire, and we have our Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg. Finally, we have the juicy and sometimes shocking celebrity saga that's the bread and butter of such publications as Entertainment Tonight, People, and TMZ. The Greeks had their scandalous trio of Agamemnon, Clytemnestra, and Oedipus. We have our Kardashians. What I want to stress is that these stories teach us, whether we like it or not, certain lessons. These lessons include ideas and values about such things as which personal qualities and actions are worthy of admiration, what it is that we owe to other human beings, and the usefulness of physical violence. To be sure, I've barely begun to scratch the surface of what these stories teach us. And it's probably no exaggeration to say that scholars will be working for the next several centuries trying to figure out which admirable qualities our age saw in the Kardashians. But you see my point. You're right to detect a little concern on my part about our contemporary stories. Nevertheless, it's not my belief that the picture is all bad. Quite the contrary. Even in the few examples I've cited, there are many elements that affirm noble values and praiseworthy behaviors. What's more, I strongly believe that many of today's best-known stories are superior to their older versions. For example, we now have a story in which a person of color becomes president. With luck, before too long, we'll have a similar one about a female president or a president belonging to another underrepresented group. Other stories that are being actively written as I speak teach us that healthy, loving relationships and families can take different forms and that there are new, nonviolent ways to nourish democracy. You must keep such beneficial stories in mind because along with the ones you recognize as harmful, they provide an essential map through the forest. Now, before I surrender the podium, I want to direct your attention briefly to the folktale I alluded to at the beginning of my remarks, Little Red Riding Hood. To those of you who caught this allusion, I award 25 extra credit graduation points. Dean Johnson and I will explore the possibility of transferring these points to your bar exams. I return to Little Red Riding Hood. If some of you think that this story is not your story, I think I can convince you otherwise. In the folk tale, not only is Red Riding Hood famous for wearing a cap and gown, but at least for the foreseeable future, she also expects to be living at home. Let me quickly refresh your memory with a basic summary of the plot. Red, as I'll call her, sets out into the forest because she wants to deliver a piece of cake and a bottle of wine to her grandmother who is ill. Not being a physician, I can't say if this is sound medical practice or not. If not, you might have your first malpractice case. But again, I digress. In the forest, Red meets a wolf who diverts her from her errand to spend some time enjoying the forest wildflowers. While she does this, the wolf races to the grandmother's cottage. When Red arrives at the cottage, she finds the wolf disguised as her grandmother, whom he has just eaten. Then Wolf eats Red, too. Fortunately, a hunter comes by, and Red and her grandmother are cut out of the wolf's stomach, apparently no worse for the wear. That is Red and the grandmother, not the wolf. The wolf dies, and all the others live happily ever after. There's, I think, an obvious lesson for today's graduates, one I'm sure you've heard from many parents and professors. It might be phrased this way: stay on your career path to a clerkship or white shoe firm, and don't lose yourself among the wildflowers. If you do, you'll be eaten by a wolf, and so apparently will your grandmother. Another related lesson seems to be, if you're a woman, be wary of men who are wolf-like, or perhaps be wary of wolf-like men who dress like grandmothers, or even be wary of wolf-like men who dress like grandmothers in a way that would never fool anyone ever. Rather than quibble about such nuances, I'd rather observe that among the things that make stories so powerful are their openness to different interpretations and their simultaneous resonance with a wide range of subjects and situations. By virtue of these qualities, stories have an extraordinary power to immerse us in highly productive contemplation about all sorts of topics, even topics we would never expect to find there. Consider once more the folk tale we've been discussing. Besides offering a timeless lesson about duty, doesn't it also contain wisdom that's curiously applicable to the present day? Notice that the wolf does not attack Red Riding Hood outright, but rather masks his true identity and then cleverly extracts from her certain types of information, including her future geolocation. The wolf plots to use this information for a purpose that Red neither suspects nor would authorize if she did, for the purpose, to be specific, of eating her. As the tale continues, we see the wolf stealing the grandmother's identity, hacking into her personal site, otherwise known as her cottage, and then deceptively friending Red herself, with disastrous results. In other words, What is our young heroine doing if not making her way through the dangerous forest of 21st century internet society? Am I serious in presenting this reading? To some degree, yes. My real intention is to urge you to think closely, analytically, and even creatively about the stories that are everywhere around you. This, I believe, will help you succeed in your journey and keep you safe from some of the wolves. Once again, my heartiest congratulations to today's graduates.
Thanks, Provost Hexter. I'm very pleased to introduce today's keynote speaker, California Assembly Speaker Emeritus John A. Perez. Mr. Perez was elected to the Assembly in 2008. In 2010, his colleagues elected him as California's 68th Assembly Speaker. As Speaker, Mr. Perez fought to protect higher education in incredibly difficult budgetary times. He successfully opposed efforts to cut the Cal Grant program. In 2012, Speaker Perez authored the Middle Class Scholarship Act, which sought to cut student fees for middle-class families for students at the University of California and California State University systems. He also worked to provide support for community college students. Speaker Perez, until very recently, served on the UC Board of Regents. Throughout his time in office, Speaker Perez has fought to ensure that every Californian has access to higher education. Please join me in welcoming Speaker Emeritus John A. Perez.
Good afternoon, and congratulations to the class of 2014. Before I begin, I want to take a moment to thank J.K. Rowling for furnishing the wardrobe for today. I've actually always found the idea of academic regalia to be a little confusing. Nowhere else would stature be demonstrated by being in a robe at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, save for perhaps the Playboy Mansion. Now, as commencement speaker, I follow in footsteps of such great and notable Californians as Congressional Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi and Supreme Court Justice Goodwin Liu. And I'm not too proud to admit that I wasn't the first choice for commencement speaker this year. It was originally thought it should be someone with a more direct and interactional relationship with the law and the courts. The administration approached both Justin Bieber and Toronto Mayor Rob Ford. But apparently, a commencement being held at the Mondavi Center violated terms of their rehab agreements. So I was happy to step in and be with you in this auspicious moment of your lives. And as you end your formal legal education, I ask that you commit yourself to the cause of justice. Too often we think of justice in the narrowest of terms, but in reality there are so many issues that require dedicated individuals to stand up and fight for just outcomes. The framers of the Fourth Amendment could not begin to believe or conceive of a world where personal information of every citizen is freely and readily available on the internet. And yet, we must decide whether that information can or should be accessible to the government lacking a warrant. Who amongst you will stand up for the privacy of everyone, and who will respond? Who will argue and adhere to the ideals that a government's reach cannot extend into the private lives of its citizens without probable cause being found and due process being observed? And who amongst you will answer the argument in a world haunted by the lurking specter of terrorism? This is a debate that has been waged long before the Constitution was adopted, long before King John signed the Magna Carta. These are questions that stretch back to antiquity. One of the most famous debates to ever occur in the Roman Senate was centered on the question of due process. In 63 BC, Marcus Tullius Cicero served as consul of Rome, and upon learning of a conspiracy to overthrow the Republic, Cicero had the Senate declare the Roman equivalent of martial law. He then captured and executed the conspirators without trial. What followed was an extraordinary debate in the Senate. Many of the leading members of the Senate contested back and forth on the legality of Cicero's actions. Julius Caesar led the opposition, conceding that although the conspirators presented a genuine danger to the Republic, the greater threat to the Republic came from allowing the precedent to stand that the consul or any Roman citizen could deprive another Roman citizen of his life without first having brought the person to trial. A debate between two of the most iconic figures in history, waged nearly 2,100 years ago, is as relevant today as it was in the time of the Roman Republic. And that's a powerful testament to the enduring nature of these questions and the continual search for justice, a search that continues to this very day. In a world where anyone can post vile and hateful words on somebody's wall, or secretly record them on a webcam and post the video for all the world to see, at what point do we consider the line to have been crossed? At what point does free speech and free expression become an invasion of privacy or a violation of the other person's 14th Amendment's rights? In a society where young children can be brought across the border by their parents without proper documentation, attend our schools, pledge allegiance to our flag, serve in our military, is it just to deny them the rights of citizenship? And then what it is that we believe those rights entail. These are all questions we as a society confront every single day. And for my colleagues and me in the legislature, they take much of our consideration. From my first day that I was sworn in to the Assembly, I've labored to live up to the oath that I swore as an Assembly member and the charge that's emblazoned over the rostrum of our chambers, where it says, legislatorum est justus legis condere. It is the duty of the legislature to pass just laws. Now, that's not a simple charge. In a large and pluralistic society, each legislator views questions of justice through their own prism and their own worldview. And so as I approach these often difficult questions, I turn to the wisdom that I first discovered as a high school student. And I'm sure many of you shared a similar experience that I had in reading Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail. April 12th, 1963, which happened to be Good Friday. Dr. King was roughly arrested as thousands of African Americans looked on. He found himself in jail for protesting in an action of civil disobedience against the pervasive segregation of the Alabama of his day. And as he sat in jail, he was brought a copy of an open letter published in the local newspaper. It was entitled A Call for Unity. It was published by white clergy calling upon Dr. King and his compatriots to abandon his protest through nonviolent civil disobedience. And without notes or access to source material, he embarked on answering that open letter. His entire response is a profound meditation on the nature of justice. It speaks to so much of our history as a nation, of our imperfect struggle to form a more perfect union and live up to that first charge of our Constitution. There's one passage in particular that has a poignant resonance for anyone who's ever been called to cast a vote for or against a law in which justice was the essential question. In it, Dr. King speaks to how we can determine whether laws are just or unjust. And he recalls the teaching of St. Thomas Aquinas, concluding that any law that uplifts human personality is just, and that any law that denigrates human personality is unjust. That passage, I believe, is a perfect distillation of how each of us can approach questions of justice, and it has been a source of guidance for me throughout my time in the legislature. Now, I've read the letter many times, and it's always spoken powerfully to me. But a few months ago, I was honored to have an experience that made those words on the page come to life in a very special way, as if I was reading it again for the very first time. You see, in January, the legislature commemorated the King holiday on our floor, and we were privileged to have a special guest with us who I was honored to spend some time with. His name is Dr. Clarence Jones. Now, you may not know the name, but you're familiar with his work. Dr. Jones was Dr. King's lawyer and draft speechwriter, and he was the one who would smuggle in scraps of paper for Dr. King and smuggle out the finished work from that Birmingham jail. It was an honor to have the opportunity to spend some time with him and reflect on the fundamental transformation of American life that was brought about by those brave souls who devoted their lives to the cause of justice. This week, as you've heard earlier, marks the 60th anniversary of the ruling in Brown versus Board of Education. It is a time for us to reflect on those changes and the role that our state played in them. And many of you will recall that Brown was preceded, although not used as a precedent, by cases here in California. The decisions in Mendez versus Westminster Schools, Alvarez versus Lemon Grove School District, where parents of Latino children successfully challenged the segregation policies of the school districts in which they lived. These were the first successful challenges to segregated schools, coming years before the unanimous ruling in Brown versus Board of Education that led to sweeping transformation in American life. Over the last 3 years, you've had a unique perch as law students to witness a similar transformation in our society, where the law has evolved considerably in a variety of areas. Allow me to discuss one particular area, and that is in the discussion of marriage equality. Now, for me, election night 2008 was a special night. I was celebrating my first election to the State Assembly, and I'll always remember that it was the night where I gained the right to serve in the legislature and lost the right to get married. Of course, Proposition 8 was immediately challenged in the courts, and as a gay man, I had a vested interest in the outcomes of that trial. But I didn't know that in a certain manner of speaking, I would be part of that trial as well. Between the filing of the challenge and the beginning of the trial, I'd been elected by my colleagues to serve as Assembly Speaker, making me the first openly gay person in American history to serve in that post in any state in our country. During the trial portion of the case before Judge Von Walker was a discussion of whether the LGBT community was considered a suspect class and whether we deserve strict scrutiny in the question. And this was a question that was really about the attempt to limit our rights and whether or not that action would be invalidated under strict scrutiny. It was a pivotal issue, and the proponents of Prop 8 argued that the LGBT community should not be viewed as a suspect class, and then thus Prop 8 should not receive strict scrutiny. Now, during cross-examination of Gary Segura, that's former UC Davis professor Gary Segura, the attorneys representing the proponents of Prop 8 used my election as Speaker as proof that the LGBT community had political power and therefore were not to be considered a suspect class. Reading the transcripts of that day's proceedings, you can imagine my reaction to see my name being invoked as proof that it was constitutionally sound to strip me and every other gay and lesbian person in California of our constitutional rights. There I was, the most powerful legislator in the most populous state in America, and yet I felt powerless to pass a law and right a wrong. My colleagues and I did what we could. We rallied the faithful and articulated our beliefs to the media and the public at large. I went so far as to change my biography in the official state documents to change the marital status from single to constitutionally prohibited. But then I realized that I had a different right, a right open to every citizen, but usually only invoked by lawyers, which is the right to file an amicus brief before the Supreme Court. So I joined together with 47 legal scholars from around the country, and we filed an amicus brief to raise issues that we felt would not be raised during the court trial without intervention. For all the power and influence that comes with the office of Speaker, the restoration of my rights could only be achieved by people with an understanding of the law and a passion for justice who successfully restored my rights and the rights of millions others across this country in the highest court of the land. We're still seeing the reverberation of that decision and the ongoing evolution in this area of law. The debate we're experiencing across the country is an apt reminder of another passage from Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail, where he wrote that all progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step towards the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle, the tireless exertion and passionate concern of dedicated individuals. Take a moment to reflect on that. Think about the marriage cases or the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s. Think about the suffragettes a century before. Think about the founders who came together in Philadelphia in 1776 to proclaim self-evident truths about equality, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The gains we've made are a direct result of the tireless exertion of so many people devoted to the cause of justice. Now, take a moment and reflect on why you chose to go to law school in the first place. Think about all those hours of studying, all those grueling exams, all the arguments and lectures. Think about the friends you haven't seen and the family occasions you've missed. If Gwyneth Paltrow was here, she would probably call law school a conscious uncoupling from your social life. Now ask yourself, why did you make all of these sacrifices? Was it simply to join a prestigious law firm and settle the finer points of tax law? Or was it because you wanted to make a difference? Because you dreamed of being the next Clarence Darrow or Thurgood Marshall, the next Barbara Jordan or Sonia Sotomayor? Because you envisioned a day when you would stand before a judge, armed with a righteous conviction, and make the powerful argument that right's a grave wrong? Or a day when years of work on just legislation reached its conclusion with the president's signature? Or getting a phone call from a grateful client letting you know that because of your efforts, a polluted neighborhood will finally get cleaned up? You studied law for a reason, and I suspect that for many of you, that reason was to serve the cause of justice. You have so many opportunities ahead of you, and I strongly urge you to consider the totality of what you can do. You can work for a nonprofit that provides legal protection for our most vulnerable citizens whose rights have been violated. You can serve the people of California by arguing for justice for the victims of crime or for the accused. And as a sheer number of lawyers who serve as policy advisors in the Speaker's office can attest, you can serve justice by working directly to pass just laws. I certainly understand that many, if not most of you, leave here with significant financial obligations to meet as a result of your student loans. But there's a way to serve the public. The Department of Education maintains a public service loan forgiveness program. That program gives you the flexibility to fight for justice in a number of fields, from military service to public interest law, where your commitment can earn loan forgiveness. And I'm going to take a moment and ask your friends and family to write down this website. The robes don't lend themselves to writing, which is probably why Dumbledore was so rarely appeared with a pen in his hand. The website is www.studentaid.ed.gov. www.studentaid.ed.gov. It has information on the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And I urge you to take some time to consider the possibility of public service, of devoting your career to the cause of justice through public service. There is no greater reward in life than knowing that you've made a difference in the life of someone else. Each of you have the potential and the ability to make a lasting impact. Each of you can write the laws that define justice for the 21st century. Each of you can be an agent of justice for people who don't believe justice will be theirs. Each of you can transform people's lives by standing up for their dignity and worth. As you walk out of this hall proud of your accomplishments and prouder still of the possibilities in front of you, I have one final request. Think of the directive from the great suffragette Carrie Chapman Catt, who said, "To the wrongs that need resistance, to the rights that need assistance, to the future in the distance, commit yourself." Thank you and congratulations, class of 2014.
Thank you, Speaker Perez. I just want to be clear on one thing. Justin Bieber was not invited to give any remarks here today.
I didn't mention an indictment.
Our commencement's the product of a lot of hard work by our superb staff at the law school, and I want to thank a few of them before we get on to the mentioning of the students. Please join me in thanking our events manager, Gia Helwig, our Director of Marketing and Communications, Pamela Wu, and all the staff who are here today and have helped organize this event. Thank you all. Now it's my pleasure to invite Provost Hexter to confer upon the graduates the degree of Laws and Juris Doctor.
Will the Master of Law degree candidates please stand? By the authority vested in me by the Regents of the University of California, I confer upon you the degree of Master of Laws. Please be seated. Will the Juris Doctor degree candidates please stand? By the authority vested in me by the Regents of the University of California, I confer upon you the degree of Juris Doctor. Please be seated.
Will the candidate for the degree of Master of Laws please stand and proceed to the stage? Su Chun Ye. Jing Han. Xiao Fei Li. Yu Dai. Yu Shi Wang. Yen Shin Ma. Feng Lu Liu. Xing Hao Song. Bo Hong Yu. Yi Yi Chang. Ravmeet Nagra. Ramya Honagauda. Ika Diusanova. Youssef Yaqub Al-Mansouri. Cao Feng. Lu Zhang. Abdullah Al-Mutayiri. Pawisa Gawi. Mohammed Saiful Aris. Han Yu Bao. Li Feng Li. Dan Feng Chen. Hao Wu. Chen Shui. Jun Chao Isaac Ye. Jungwon Regina J. Su Chul Kim. Yunwan Wang. Haonan Lin. Yifeng Shi. Keni Li. Maggie Jun Chang. Yanan Bao. Yu Chen Yao. Yi Yi Zhu. Yao Yi Zhu Gu. Wei Feng. Xing Wang. Wenjing Zhang. Lan Ma. Philip Malik. Shui Bai. Yukyu Chang. Jinan Mao. Xinghao Gong. San Min Kim. Jie Sol. Hai Yan Lim. Chong Chul Chang. Sung Woo Kwan. Niku Farahi. Andrei Nikolaevich Kalugin. Will the first row of Juris Doctor candidates please stand and proceed to the stage? Which I think they already may have done. Jamie Sterling Elmore. Tara J. Hutzel. Alice M. Kuregian. Chunpreet Singh. Julia M. Johnson. Ninka Schouten. Stefan T. Zier. Annalisa Batanidis. Catherine E. Fowler. Madeline Courtney Weiss. Anne Baptiste. Sonia M. Rinkus. Anna Marie von Herman. Stephanie Lynn Platenkamp. Kyle Joseph Junninger. Rebecca Molly Freed. Samantha Beatty. Sarah Catherine Glatt. Karen E. Kantz. Sarah Otten. Margot Marie Pelusi. China M. Swanson. Holly Amanda McManus. Dennis Francis Murphy, Jr. Brett A. Smith. Joel Charles Gerson. Scott Anthony Swertsharf. David Stephen Christie. Ronnie G. Klausner. Daniel B. Johnson. Daniel Leon Moore. Daniel S. Schimmel. Douglas James Bojack. Edwin Eugene Stussy. Tanner S. Wicks. William Stanger. Anjali Bansal. Tori Patel. Andrew Masser. Christine M. Musin. Stephanie Yvette Hall. Rebecca Ann Dreyfus. John Andrew Mellis. Mike Parnas. Evan Bloom Jason Nyagam. Kimberly Ann Court. Brianna N. Fitzpatrick. Catherine L. Bilder. Christopher Neil Gorman. Aaron S. Levenick. Annika H. Carlson. Imran Bhatti. Tara Shabahan. Ryan M. Lohr. Anna Park. Susan J. Yoon. Anna Nicole Agravante. Razmig Kayelyan. Marshall Lee Baker. Michael Edward Profont. Katie R. O'Farrell. Zachary John Ray. Andrew D. Day. Alexander David Hirsch. Elizabeth A. Ballard. Tulin Guerrer. Joseph F. Uzarski. Nathan O. George. David M. Carl. Jeffrey Stephen Spurk. Anna Esther Yee. Rubina Chia Wei Chioang. Tiffany J. Gilliam. Aaron C. Tanimura. Marcus Tang. Tina Wang. Andrew D. Hua. Mike Lay.
Thank you.
Kyle Michael G. Eunice Lee. Ji-young Elizabeth Park. Laura S. Tang. Sue Chung. Timothy Wong. Mei Mei Lee. Jessica Lay. Hermanuel Gadula Absidi. Christopher B. Ogata. Islam Mohammed Ahmad. Cody O. Byrne. Poom Sari Damrongwoot. Daniel K. Tu. Joseph P. Lin. Jason J. Perez. Daniel Evan Griffiths. Catherine Ann Lawrence. Nelson Chu. Hovannes Nalbandian. Amanda Lee Smith. Pratima Joglaker. Sachin Kalra. Adrian Baldwin Connolly. Alexandra Heifetz. Bradley E. Showman. Kelly Irene Volkar. Anita Mukherjee. Anisa Zareen Jasawala. Tony Chiu. Hank Dwi Nguyen. Thomas Stephen Dombrowski. Jessica Faith O'Neill Dummer. Jordy Herr. Laura Ann Gallagher. Bejan Iyer Atashkar. Elise N. Weinberg. Sarah Margaret Gold. Claire C. Jacobson. Miles L. Prince. James Che. Marvin C. Cho. Nasim S. Torkaman. Naz Pornashband. Bellet Mary Lazar. Michael J. Sellers. Jeremy M. Kutcher. Raimundo Jaquez III. Babak Bob Norouzi. Kelly Victoria Bradfield. Jennifer Marie Frierson. Janelle Sue Henderson Krotiger. Jessica T. Arena. Benicio J. Cisneros. DJ Lee. Mitchell M. Solomon. Laura A. Bandler. Beth Elise Weaver. Tucker N. Wisdom Stack. Danielle N. Skornick. Carl Christopher Larson. Justin Chang. Hannah L. Jones. Laura A. Gavilan. Adriana Ariel Rubino. David J. Jefferson. James E. Newman. Roxanne Farmer. Joseph M. Zebron. Amrit Gill. Martin D. Freeman. Irene Elizabeth L. Williams. Sean A. Newland. Patrick Ting. Jennifer Laudan Yazdi. Ananth Srinivasan. Alexander J. Alpert. Jenna R. Yarkin. Molly Bowman Zilli. Ladies and gentlemen, a quick reminder to join us for a reception immediately following the ceremony in honor of the graduates in the Mondavi Theater lobby and just outside the center's front doors, where you entered the building. We have a large number of students graduating today, and we appreciate your patience while they find their seats. And I guess I'll know they have when the baby arrives. Will the graduates please rise? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to present to you the 17th graduating class of Masters of Laws and 46th graduating class of Juris Doctor graduates of School of Law. This brings the commencement ceremony to a close. Will the guests please remain seated during the recessional?
Thank you.